There was a day, and you remember it even if you have never spoken it out loud, when the striving stopped making sense. Not because you gave up, not because you lost faith, but because something deeper than your will was sending a signal you did not yet have the language for. You kept moving after that day. You kept showing up, kept pushing, kept performing the motions of a life that looked functional from the outside. But something had shifted underneath all of it, and you felt it, the way you feel a change in the weather before the sky shows it. That low, quiet, knowing that the ground beneath you was not the same anymore. You are tired, and this is not a gentle tiredness. This is not the kind that a good night of sleep addresses or a weekend away dissolves. This is the tiredness that lives in the place where your deepest efforts have been stored. The place where you kept every promise you made to yourself. The place where you put every dream you were not ready to speak yet. That place has been working for a long time. It has been grinding against resistance that should not have lasted this long. And the exhaustion you are carrying right now is not a character flaw. It is not evidence of weakness. It is the natural consequence of a person who was built for something specific, spending year after year pressing against the wrong walls. There is something worth naming before anything else is said. The tiredness you are sitting with is not ordinary. The people around you might be tired in ways that make sense, tired from overwork or grief or ordinary strain. What you are carrying feels different because it is different. There is something in you that was fashioned with a specific weight to it, a gravity that pulls you toward a thing you have not yet fully entered, and the distance between where you are standing and where you were made to stand has been producing a friction in you that never fully goes away. That friction is not punishment, it is direction. It is the specific signal of a life that has been claimed for a purpose it has not yet fully inhabited. You did not arrive here by accident today. That is not a spiritual cliché. It is a plain statement of what is actually happening. The moment you are in right now, the fact that these words found you, the specific combination of weariness and hunger that made you pause here instead of somewhere else, all of it is arranged. Not by the algorithm, not by chance. By the same hand that fashioned you before you had a name on this earth and decided, before any of your choices were made, that you would be set apart for something. God does not waste the exhausted. He selects them. He looks for the ones who have been stripped of their self-sufficiency, the ones whose own plans have worn them down to the place of honest need. And he speaks directly into that place. He does not wait for you to be impressive. He does not require you to have it together before he shows up. He comes precisely into the middle of the undone, the unfinished, the worn out, and he begins there. If this word is already landing somewhere real in you, and something in your chest is responding even now, type, "Yes, I am ready" in the comments right now. That simple act is not small. It is the beginning of something. This ministry is built for people who are still being put back together. If you feel led to support the work that makes these messages possible, you are welcome to do so, from wherever you are and with whatever you have. No expectation, only gratitude. Because what is coming in this word is not a message about striving harder. It is not a new strategy for pushing through. It is something far more important than that. It is the revelation that the thing you have been exhausted by chasing was never meant to be chased at all. It was meant to find you. And the reason you are tired is not that you have failed to catch it. It is that you have been running in the same direction it has been running toward you, and all that distance, all that straining forward has been two things moving toward each other without yet knowing how close they already are. Your destiny is not waiting for you to become something you are not. It is not holding its breath until you fix the parts of yourself you are most ashamed of. It is not paused at some distant finish line, watching to see if you finally measure up. It is moving. It has always been moving, and it has been moving specifically, deliberately, and without interruption, straight toward the place where you are standing right now. Running has always been part of the story. This is not something unique to you, and it is worth understanding that before you receive the weight of what is being said here. The men and women whose lives became the most defining testimonies in all of Scripture, the ones whose names are still spoken thousands of years after they drew their last breath, almost every single one of them had a moment where they turned away from the call before they turned toward it. Not because they were faithless, not because they were disqualified, but because the human heart, when it encounters the specific gravity of divine purpose, instinctively reaches for an exit. Not out of rebellion, but out of awe. Not out of disobedience, but out of the overwhelming recognition that what is being asked requires something you are not sure you have. Moses did not stand at the burning bush and immediately say yes. He stood there and gave God 5 reasons why someone else should go. He pointed to his inadequacy. He questioned whether anyone would believe him. He brought up his voice, his stammering, the fact that he was not the kind of man whose words moved people, and God did not dismiss those concerns with impatience. He answered every one of them, because the running was not the problem. The running was simply the gap between the person Moses had believed himself to be and the person he had already been made to become. Every objection Moses raised was an honest assessment of who he was in his own eyes. And every answer God gave was a revelation of who Moses already was in heavens. Jonah ran in a direction, a literal direction, a ship, a sea, a specific city in the opposite geography from where he was sent, and even the great storm that overturned his plans. Even the 3 days in darkness that preceded his emergence were not punishments for running. They were the next part of the journey, because the story was not ruined by Jonah's resistance. The story absorbed it. The running became part of the testimony. The place he ended up, the city he finally entered, the revival that broke out there, none of it required Jonah to have never run. It only required that he eventually stopped. Elijah, after the greatest spiritual victory of his life, ran. He had just called down fire from heaven. He had stood against 450 prophets and walked away the only one standing. And within hours of that moment, he was under a tree asking God to take his life. The exhaustion after the mountain was not a sign that he was not chosen. It was a sign that he was human, and what God sent him was not a rebuke. God sent him food and rest. He told him the journey was too great for him, and gave him the means to continue it anyway. You need to see yourself in these people, not as a distant admirer of their faith, not as someone who reads their stories and thinks how different you are from them. You need to see yourself as the continuation of a pattern so consistent across Scripture that it is not an accident but a design. The chosen ones run, they question, they disappear into the wrong direction for a season. They exhaust themselves in detours that feel permanent while they are inside them. And then something happens. Something internal shifts. The running stops producing what it once promised. The alternative paths begin to close. The energy required to stay away from the purpose begins to cost more than the fear of entering it. You are in that place right now, or very close to it. The season of detour is coming to its natural end, not because you engineered that ending, but because endings of this kind are not in your hands. They are in the hands of the one who placed the call on your life before you were old enough to resist it. The moment of turning does not require perfection. It does not require you to fully understand what you are turning toward. It only requires the willingness to stop investing your remaining strength in a direction that was never yours to begin with. Every step away from your purpose has left a trail, and that trail is not evidence of failure. It is the exact geography of a person being brought back. Every chosen one who ran eventually stopped, and when they stopped, they did not find that they had wandered so far that the call had moved on without them. They found that the call had followed them the entire time, that it had been present in every detour, waiting in every dead end, patient in every season of resistance. Because a call that can be outrun was never a true calling, and what is on your life cannot be outrun. It has already proven that. Destiny rarely looks the way you imagined it would. That is worth saying plainly, because one of the most powerful reasons people continue to run is that what they are running from does not match the image they constructed of what their purpose was supposed to feel like. You had a picture, most chosen ones do, a picture of how the confirmation would arrive, how the doors would open, how the season of assignment would begin. And when the actual movement of destiny in your life looked nothing like that picture, it was easy to conclude that either the picture was wrong, or the promise was wrong, or you were wrong. What was actually happening was none of those things. What was happening was that destiny was doing what it always does. It was arriving through pressure. Think about the places in your life where the most significant changes happened. Not the changes you planned and executed with a clear strategy. The changes that actually altered who you are. Almost every one of them came through disruption. Through the loss of something you thought was permanent. Through a door closing with a finality that felt like cruelty in the moment. Through being displaced from a position you had built carefully over time, and finding yourself standing in a new space with nothing familiar around you. Those moments did not feel like destiny arriving. They felt like everything falling apart. And that feeling was not dishonest. Things were falling apart. The structures you had built that were not built for where you were going were being systematically removed. The collapse of the alternative is one of the primary tools of divine direction. When God is moving a chosen one into their actual lane, He does not always shout the instruction from a clear sky. Sometimes, He simply closes every other road, one by one, quietly, with explanation. The options that seemed viable begin to lose their viability. The career that was supposed to be the stable ground becomes unstable. The relationship that was meant to anchor the life you were building begins to shift in ways you cannot reverse. The plan that seemed solid enough to bet your next decade on develops the kind of cracks that can no longer be ignored. And you stand in the middle of all of it, wondering what you did wrong, when the honest answer is that you did not do anything wrong. You simply had your hand on a door that was never yours to open, and grace finally, mercifully, stopped letting you force it. This is what the inside of destiny feels like for chosen ones in the middle of the process. It does not feel like promotion. It does not feel like arrival. It feels like reduction, like being stripped of the things that were making it possible to keep living a life that was adjacent to your purpose but not inside it. And that stripping is not punishment. It is preparation, because you cannot carry into your true assignment the weight of everything you accumulated while avoiding it. The excess has to go. The dependencies that were actually distractions have to be resolved. The false foundations have to give way so that the actual ground of your calling can become visible beneath your feet. Comment 77 if you believe this word is for you, because what is being described right now is not a general spiritual principle. It is the specific architecture of your recent years. You recognize it. You have lived it. The question that has been following you through all of it is not whether the calling is real. You know it is real. The question has been whether you are still eligible for it after everything that happened in the detour. And this is the word that needs to reach you with absolute clarity. Eligibility for your destiny was never based on the cleanliness of your journey toward it. It was established before your journey began. This ministry does not exist because everything is perfect behind the scenes. It exists because people believe the message is worth the effort it takes to keep going. Producing consistent, quality content week after week requires time and resources, and the people behind this work are sustained by the generosity of those who have been touched by it. If you feel genuinely moved to give, your support goes directly into the mission, not to earn anything, not to receive anything in return, simply because you believe this work matters and you want to help it continue. The pressure you have been under, the displacement you have experienced, the slow collapse of the alternative life you tried to build instead, none of it has disqualified you. All of it has been doing exactly what it was designed to do. It has been clearing the path, not by destroying you, but by dismantling the specific obstacles between you and the thing you were made for. The pain was real, the losses were real, and they were also, every single one of them, part of the architecture of an arrival that was always coming. While you were building other plans, something was moving toward you. This is the part of the story that chosen ones often cannot see until after the fact, because it requires looking backward across a landscape that felt entirely like wandering and recognizing the precision with which every step was being ordered. Not by your own wisdom, not by your own navigation, by something far more patient and far more strategic than anything your own mind could have arranged. You were not wandering, you were being walked somewhere. And the thing that was walking you was also walking toward you, closing the distance from both ends, until the moment when meeting became inevitable. Think about the doors that closed before you could walk through them fully. The opportunities that looked like your breakthrough and then dissolved without satisfying explanation. The times you came close to something that felt like your purpose and then watched it move just out of reach before you could grab it. In the moment, each of those closings felt like failure. It felt like being passed over, like being overlooked, like evidence that the gap between where you were and where you were meant to be was too wide to cross. But what was actually happening in every single one of those closings was that something was keeping you available. Something was maintaining the space around you, not allowing you to fill it with things that would make it impossible to receive what was actually coming. The door that did not open for you 2 years ago. The room you could not get into. The partnership that looked perfect and then fell apart at a moment that felt devastating. Not one of those was a mistake. Not one of those was heaven being careless with your life. Every single one of them was a deliberate act of preservation. You were being kept for something. And the keeping required that certain things not work out. Not because you were not worthy of them, but because they were not large. Enough for what you were being prepared to carry. There is a concept in Scripture that most people misread as abandoned, and it is actually the opposite. It is the concept of being held back. Being withheld from something, not because you are undeserving, but because the season has not arrived yet. And entering before the season opens always costs more than the wait. Joseph spent years in a prison he did not deserve to be in. From the outside, it looked like a life derailed. From heaven, it looked like a man being positioned. Because the specific skills that would be needed to interpret the dream of Pharaoh, the specific credibility that would come from having survived what Joseph survived, the specific humility that would be formed in a man who had once been the favored son and was now wearing chains. None of those things could have been produced any other way. The prison was not a detour from the purpose. The prison was part of the preparation. What has your prison looked like? Not necessarily a literal one, but the place of confinement that you did not choose and could not escape. The season of restriction that seemed to have no end and no purpose. The place where your gifts were visible to almost no one and your potential was going unrecognized. That place has been doing something to you. It has been forming something in you that cannot be formed in comfort. The weight of it has been pressing something out of you that needed to be released and pressing something into you that you will carry into your purpose as one of your most essential tools. The pursuit never stopped, even when you could not feel it, even when the silence felt like absence. Even when you had nearly convinced yourself that the original sense of calling was something you had imagined or projected, that it was a product of your own desire rather than an actual divine assignment. Even in those moments, the pursuit continued. The hand that set you apart before your birth did not take a season off because you needed one. The purpose that was woven into your design before you took your first breath did not dissolve because you questioned it. It kept moving toward you. Patient beyond your patience. Faithful beyond your faith. Constant beyond your consistency. You are not at the end of a failed story. You are at the convergence point of two movements that have been approaching each other for a very long time. One is the life you have been living, with all its detours and delays and days of doubt. The other is the assignment that was yours before you were born. And the reason the ground feels different beneath you right now, the reason something in you is awake in a way it has not been for a long time, is that the distance between those two movements has finally closed to almost nothing. You have been calling them coincidences. The recurring themes that showed up in your life too specifically and too consistently to be explained away, but that you explained away anyway, because the alternative was too significant to sit with comfortably. The moments that felt too targeted to be random, where the right word arrived at the exact moment of the right crisis, where a door opened in the exact week that every other door had closed, where a stranger said something to you in passing that cut through years of noise and landed directly on the thing you had been quietly praying about. You filed those moments under something manageable. Luck, timing, interesting, and you moved on, because naming them for what they actually were would have required something of you. But they were not coincidences, and somewhere beneath the explanation you gave them, you already knew that. The pull you have felt towards certain things that you cannot fully account for with logic or background or training. The way certain scriptures find you at certain moments with a specificity that seems personal rather than general. The way a message, a word, a song, a conversation arrives and speaks directly into the exact interior landscape you are navigating without any of the people involved knowing what that landscape looks like. These are not accidents. They are the fingerprints of a pursuit that has been active since before you were old enough to recognize it. Think about the themes that keep returning to your life. Not the surface circumstances, but the deeper patterns beneath them. Leadership appearing in places where you did not seek it. People bringing you their heaviest at things and somehow leaving lighter. A sensitivity to what is happening under the surface of situations that others do not seem to share. A capacity for endurance that has surprised even you on the days when everything in you wanted to stop, but something kept you moving forward. Anyway, these are not personality traits that appeared randomly. They are the outline of a function. They are the shape of an assignment drawn in the material of your own life. The specific pain you have carried is also part of this. This is harder to receive, but it is necessary. The precise nature of your deepest wounds, the specific losses you have sustained, the particular ways that life has broken you open, these are not irrelevant to your calling. They are threaded through it. Because the people you are going to reach were not reached by someone who was untouched. They were reached by someone who knew the interior of the darkness they were sitting in. The healer, who has never been sick, cannot speak to the sick the way the healer who has come through the sickness can. The voice that speaks into devastation with true authority is almost always the voice that has lived inside that devastation and found its way through. God does not waste the broken places. He builds with them. He takes the specific shape of every place you were cracked open and uses it as the exact contour of a door that someone else needs to walk through. Your testimony is not a footnote to your purpose. It is the infrastructure of it. The years that felt like pure loss were producing in you a fluency, in a language that the people you were made to serve are still learning to speak. And now you are about to step into rooms where that language is the only one that works. Type "I will not back down" in the comments right now, because this is the moment when resistance from the enemy of your soul intensifies. Every time a chosen one comes this close to receiving the full revelation of their assignment, there is a surge of interference, a sudden doubt about whether any of this is real. A voice that sounds rational and measured and reminds you of all the times you believed something was beginning and it turned out to be nothing. Do not receive that voice right now. It is not discernment. It is distraction. It is the exact kind of interference that always arrives at the exact moment when the breakthrough is no longer theoretical. The signs were real, every single one of them. The ones you dismissed, the ones you filed under coincidence, the ones you allowed the noise of life to bury before you could examine them properly. They were all real. They were all part of a long, patient communication from a God who does not give up on his chosen ones, even when they are no longer looking for the signals. He keeps sending them. He keeps arranging the encounters. He keeps placing the specific words in the specific mouths that will find you in the specific season when you are finally ready to hear them without immediately explaining them away. Today is one of those days. This is one of those moments, and you already know it. There is a cost to continued resistance that most people do not talk about directly, and it needs to be addressed here with honesty and without cruelty. Because what is at stake is not only the realization of your purpose. What is at stake is the condition of the person who carries it. Prolonged resistance to a divine calling does not leave you neutral. It's not simply pause your story while you work out whether you are ready. It does something to the interior of a person, something slow and accumulative. That is worth understanding clearly so that you can make an honest decision about how much longer you are willing to pay that cost. When a person is built for a specific function and that function goes long unfulfilled, there is a kind of internal pressure that builds without release. You feel it as restlessness, as a low-grade dissatisfaction that follows you into every season, into every accomplishment, into every relationship, like a persistent undertone that refuses to be silenced by the surface-level victories. You can succeed at things that are not your purpose. You can be respected in rooms that are not yours. You can build a life that looks entirely complete from the outside and still feel, in the quietest hours, that something essential is absent, that you are living adjacent to your life rather than inside it. That feeling is not ingratitude. It is not depression, although it can begin to look like depression when it goes unaddressed for long enough. It is the signal of a designed instrument that has not yet been used for what it was designed to do. A key that has been used to prop open windows rather than unlock the specific door it was cut for. And every year that passes without that door being found, the gap between what the person is and what the person was made to be produces a particular kind of grief that they often cannot name or explain. Elijah under the tree was living this. He was not broken because he had failed. He was broken because the weight of his assignment and the resistance of the world around him had not been balanced by the restoration that comes from entering fully into rest and purpose together. He was still carrying more than any person was meant to carry alone. And God's response, as it has been noted before, was not a sermon. It was food and water and the instruction to rest, because the journey was too great for him in his current condition. God did not tell him the journey was wrong. He told him the journey required more than what Elijah currently had to give, and then he provided the provision for the next leg. This is the invitation being extended to you in this moment. Not to push harder, not to manufacture a faith you do not feel, not to perform a readiness that is not yet real. The invitation is to stop spending your strength resisting the thing that was made for you, because that resistance, however understandable, is the single most exhausting thing you are doing. The fear of entering the purpose costs more energy over time than entering it ever could. The maintenance of an alternative life that does not fit the design of who you actually are is a daily expenditure that never produces a return. And the quiet grief of a life adjacent to its calling is a weight that compounds with every passing year. Surrender is not the word most chosen ones want to hear. It carries connotations of defeat, of giving up, of white flags and broken resistance. But in the context of divine purpose, surrender is the most powerful thing a chosen one can do. It is not the end of your strength. It is the redirection of it. It is the moment you stop using your considerable capacity to hold the door closed and begin using it to walk through. And the relief that arrives in that moment, the specific kind of rest that comes when a person finally stops fighting against the current that was always moving in their direction, is unlike anything that the maintenance of resistance has ever been able to produce. You are not too far gone. There is no version of your story in which the running has taken you to a place beyond the reach of the calling. The calling is right here. It has been here the entire time. And the only thing it has ever required of you is the decision to stop defining yourself by the distance you have traveled from it and to start receiving the truth that it never moved. It has already begun. This is the word that needs to land with its full weight right now, not as a comfort phrase, not as a motivational close, but as a plain statement of what is actually true. The beginning you have been waiting for, the one you pictured as a dramatic and unmistakable event, a burning bush, an audible voice, an undeniable sign that even your doubt could not dismantle. That beginning is not ahead of you. It is already underneath your feet. You are already standing in the opening chapter of the thing you were made for. The only question is whether you will recognize it as such. This is how beginnings work for chosen ones. They do not arrive as announcements. They arrive as recognitions. The bush was burning before Moses turned to look at it. He simply had not noticed yet. The moment of his calling was not the moment the fire appeared. It was the moment he turned aside to see it. And in that turning, he became someone who could no longer proceed as though he had not seen it. You are at that moment right now, not approaching it, in it. This word, this day, this particular convergence of your exhaustion and your hunger and the precise content of what is being spoken into your spirit right now is not preparation for the beginning. It is the beginning Suspend it. Do not defer it. Do not file it under things to process later and return to the life you walked in with unchanged. Do not allow the very real and very understandable fear of what this means to move you backward into the familiar territory of not yet and almost and someday. Because someday and almost and not yet have had a very long run in your story, and they have not delivered what they promised. They have delivered exhaustion. They have delivered the slow accumulation of a life being lived at a distance from itself. And that chapter is closing. Not because you are forcing it closed, but because it has simply run its course. You were not brought this far to be abandoned at the threshold. The same hand that fashioned you before your birth, that ordered your steps through every season of your detour, that kept the calling intact through every year of your resistance, is the same hand that is present in this exact moment. It has not grown impatient. It has not found a replacement. It has been walking with you the entire way, carrying the assignment safely through every storm and silence and delay. And it is holding it out to you right now, not at some future date when you feel more ready, but now, in the actual condition you are currently in. Type, "I receive it" in the comments right now. Not as a performance, not as a formality, as a genuine interior act of decision. Because the words you release carry weight. The agreement you enter into with what God has spoken over your life is not just emotional resonance. It is the opening of a door that has been standing ready for a long time, waiting only for your willing acknowledgement to swing fully open. You are chosen, not because you have been perfect, not because your journey has been clean, not because your faith has been constant or your obedience has been complete. You are chosen because you were chosen before the foundation of your history by a God whose choices are not made on the basis of current performance, but on the basis of eternal purpose. And that purpose has your name written in it with an ink that no amount of running, resisting, or detour has ever been capable of erasing. This is your moment, not a rehearsal for it, not a sign pointing toward it. The moment itself, the one that your whole life has been moving toward from the very beginning, the one that the delays were protecting, the one that the resistance was ultimately unable to prevent. Stand in it. Receive what is being released into your spirit right now. Let the exhaustion that brought you here become the soil out of which the next chapter grows. Because the same God who plants in unlikely soil, who calls the unlikely, who raises the broken and sends the mended back into the world, with a message that only the broken and healed can carry, that God is not finished with what He started in you. Comment chosen if you know this word found you today. Let that be your declaration and your witness. If today's message has moved you and you would like to support the ministry behind it, you are welcome to do so freely and without any obligation. Your generosity, however it comes, helps this word continue, reaching the people who need it most. And if you have not yet subscribed, do that now. Stay connected to what is being released through this channel, because what came today was not the end of the conversation. It was the beginning of one. There is something that happens in a person when they finally stop running and simply stand. A stillness arrives that is different from the stillness of exhaustion. It is the stillness of arrival, the particular quiet of someone who has been in motion for a very long time and has finally stepped into the place where motion gives way to presence. That is where you are standing right now if you have allowed this word to do what it came to do. Not at the end of something, at the beginning of the version of your life that was always the real one. Everything you have carried through the years of the detour, the faith that somehow survived the silence, the hope that refused to fully extinguish even on the worst days, the knowing that lived under the noise of every season that seemed to contradict it. None of it was wasted. Not a single day. Not a single tear. Not a single moment of reaching towards something that did not yet have a name. God keeps accounts that no human accounting system can track, and the record of your faithfulness through your own wilderness is held in full by the one who authored your story before you were born to live it. You are not behind. That thought has followed you for too long. The voice that has told you that you are too late, that the window has passed, that the people who were supposed to be waiting for what you carry have already found it somewhere else. That voice is not a voice of truth. It is the voice of delay trying to make itself permanent. Your assignment is not expired. Your gifts are not obsolete. The people who need what you carry are still waiting, not because no one else has shown up, but because no one else carries exactly what you do in exactly the way you carry it. Go forward from this moment as someone who has received a word and has made a decision with it. Not a feeling, because feelings will shift. A decision. The decision to stop organizing your life around the avoidance of your purpose and to begin, even imperfectly, even incompletely, even one small step at a time, to move in its direction. That is all that is required of you today. Not a full transformation, not a complete resolution of every doubt, just the next step taken in the right direction. You were chosen before you were born. You have been pursued without pause. The beginning has already arrived, and now the only thing left to do is walk in it.